All right, well, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just do a quick intro here and then we can dive right in with Kara's information and presentation here. For those that don't know me, I'm Jared. I work at Move In Shoes. Kara and Spencer have been working with us for a few months now. This is our second of the Healthy Runner Series events. Originally planned to be held at the shop, but as life goes, that couldn't happen. So we're doing it virtually. So thank you all for joining here. This will all be recorded, and we'll try to figure out a way to post it into the Facebook event. So if you have friends who weren't able to make it and missed information, you can let them know that to find it all there. Go ahead and also open up your Zoom group chat. This is going to be where we ask that you put your questions for Kara and Spencer. I will kind of compile the questions, and after each speaker, I'll bring them up to the speakers so that they can really focus on presenting the information, and we don't have too much choppiness, because Zoom is really hard to have where it's a lot of people speaking at once. Whenever you all entered, you were automatically muted. So please keep it muted unless you have something in emergency they have to bring up. The reason being is we want the screen to be showing the person speaking, whether it's Kara or Spencer, and we don't want the screens to be bouncing around too much. I think everybody that's in the waiting room has been admitted. Feel free to keep your cameras on or off. Kara, Spencer, and I will keep ours on, obviously. Yeah, without further ado, Kara, if you want to take it away.
I will. Awesome. Thanks, Jared. So I guess I want to make sure everybody can see this, my PowerPoint, and maybe just chat. Jared, just let me know if somebody says that they can't see it for whatever reason. Perfect. So I'm Kara Hare. I'm a registered dietitian in the Madison area. I focus mostly on one-on-one nutrition coaching for individuals and families. And I see actually a lot of athletes, those that are wanting to improve their performance or just are training for something or want to improve their training, and really just come alongside them and tell them how to increase their performance just by what they eat, and that can make a big difference. So I'm going to touch a little bit on that today. Depending on what you're training for, we can all improve our nutrition, and that makes a big difference on what we're doing. So I'm just going to jump right in. And all right, so in my last presentation that I gave, I touched on a lot more about why food is so essential and what maybe foods we should be eating as a whole, but I just want to touch a little bit on that before I move on to the new stuff. But like I mentioned the last time, if you were a part of that, is food is fuel. And you probably have all heard of that before, and have maybe even heard of the quote that a good diet can't make an average athlete great, but a poor diet can make a great athlete average. And I think that's just so important to realize that nutrition plays a huge role in just how things, on how you feel and how you do. So keeping that in mind, we can't expect our cars to run on empty, and so we also can't expect ourselves to run on empty, same way as we can't expect our cars to run on the wrong type of fuel. Same thing with us. And so I like to use that analogy a lot of now is not the time for diets or restrictions or anything like that, because you need to make sure that you're getting proper fuel in order to go about and do your runs and your training. And then we also can't expect to be eating the wrong foods all the time and expect to have a great run every single day. That said, really looking at consistency. So we want to look at the whole picture, not necessarily that every single meal has to be perfect. I don't even know what perfect looks like, to be honest. I don't think it exists. So if you have a donut in the morning one day, or you go out and have beer or pizza or whatever, you're not blowing it. You're totally fine. It's just what we're looking at as like a regular, on the majority on your week to week basis, what are you eating, and making sure that it is fueling you properly so that you can go out and do your runs. So just keep that in mind. We won't spend too much more time on that. And then also why it matters. So you probably know as much as I do that nutrition does matter. and that it can play a big role. But these are kind of just a laundry list of all these things that can actually, what nutrition does. So it can help you train longer, prevent fatigue, enhance your performance, improve recovery depending on when you're eating that nutrition, improve your strength, which I know Spencer will talk a lot more about that. Immunity. So again, if you're getting sick or if you're getting injured, those are all can be signs that you're not fueling properly. So I won't touch on that too much, but just want to make sure that you know just how important it is that nutrition can play a big role. All right, so we're going to get into just a little bit of science here, just because I think we need to know the background of things before we can actually, so you can kind of have an appreciation. And I just like science, so we're just going to talk a little bit about that. So as you probably or may know that there's 3 sources that we can get energy from. Only 3 sources. We can only get it from fat, protein, and then carbohydrates. We're going to talk about carbohydrates today for the most part, because that's what our bodies want to use and need to use when we are running. And for the most part, that's what our bodies use for energy. So this looks like a lot of sciencey, like arrows and everything, but I'm going to break it down for you. But the reason that we need carbohydrates is because that's what our muscles use. And then 2, it provides that quick and sustained energy that we need when we are running. So if you look at this image here, you have your liver on the left, your muscle on the right, and at the top it has glycogen. So that's just how we store our glucose or the sugar that we use. And so we want to make sure that we have enough of that. We want to take, that's our fuel tank. So that's our fuel. We want to make sure that it's like topped off. And so if we don't, that's when problems can happen. And we can't actually store that much glycogen in our bodies. And I always like to use a hiking analogy. It kind of makes it a little more easy to understand. So I don't know if you've ever been hiking, but there's some like fancy backpacks out there now. And there are like the pouches that you can have like at your hips, and they're little pockets, and you can store like the essential things that you need right away, like a granola bar. That would be like your muscle. So you can pull that granola bar out really fast, eat it, you're good. You can keep going on your hike. Doesn't really slow you down at all. So that's where we can use that glucose. It's really efficient, really fast to use. Say you ran out of the granola bars in your pouch, but you still have granola bars in your backpack. So that's pretty easy to get to too. You just have to take your backpack off, get to your granola bar, and then you can eat that. That's coming like from your liver, we'll say. Your backpack with your granola bar, that's your liver. Really pretty easy to get to. You just have to transfer that glucose or that granola bar into your front pouch, and then it's easy to use. So transfer that glucose into your muscle can keep working. Great, things are going well. Now let's say that you are at your campsite and you have like some packaged meals that you need to cook up. That would be then like your fat storage or the fatty acids in your liver. A lot more time to make, get ready, takes a lot more energy. You have to cook it. Same with like your liver, the fat. You can use, if you see in the liver there's a fatty acids, it actually uses energy in order to convert it to glucose. So no matter what, your muscle is always going to be using glucose. That's what it wants to use. And so whether it has to get that glucose from fat or carbohydrates, it's going to get there eventually. So it just takes a lot more work and energy for your body to get to that state if you're getting it from the fat. And so again, it's not recommended that we want to kind of depend on that source. We want to make sure that we have those easy, quick carbs available and that glycogen up at the top, kind of fuel tank full. So it's easy to run out of glycogen though. Again, like I said, we don't store that much. So it's about 1,500 calories worth of glycogen that we store. That's easy to get depleted even just during a run, but even like overnight, it can get depleted pretty quickly. So just keeping that in mind. Again, we go from glycogen to glucose, and that's what's then sent to your blood and into the working cells like your muscle. All right, so you want to start with a full tank because within 60 minutes of doing your exercise, so say you start with a full tank, within 60 minutes of like your training run, you're already at 50% of your glycogen. So it diminishes really quickly if you think about it. Again, this is as an average like guideline for everybody's going to be a little different. So keep that in mind too. But it doesn't take long. So just think if you start at half a tank, you're pretty much already depleted then at 60 minutes. So that's why you really want to start up high with that full tank of gas to begin with. And if you can imagine, this is when, even if you feel kind of fine after 60 minutes of exercising, we want to refuel now before the glycogen is depleted. So if you're trying to like get the glycogen up after it's been on empty, it's a lot harder to do. So we want to do it now so that your body has time to it takes a while to digest. Even if it is quick, simple carbohydrates, we want to give it some time to digest, get that blood glucose, or that glucose into the blood and into your working muscles. So it takes a little bit of time. And so we want to anticipate that it's going to happen. And I know I can't hear you right now, but just think if you know like what happens if you were to wait. Do you think you've experienced that before? I'm guessing that maybe some of you have. We're going to talk about that next. So that's that glycogen depletion is if you've heard of hitting the wall before. I think I've definitely gone to the hitting the wall part. It's just where you just can't go. You just feel like you can't go anymore. Your muscles or your legs get heavy. You just feel like you're hitting a wall almost. And that's just a sign that your muscle glycogen levels are depleted. Your muscles can't exercise at the same intensity that they were before. So that's when you really start to feel that fatigue. It just gets really hard to keep going. And granted, you're going to get fatigued if you're running for an hour or 2 hours. Like you're going to get tired. But if you're feeling that extreme fatigue, that's a sign that your glycogen is getting depleted. Also wanted to just make a note. It is really important to know that you might have like anemia, like iron deficiency too. That would show up probably sooner than an hour. But if you have times where you're like, I can barely run a mile or two and I get really fatigued and I just feel like I can't go anymore, that might be a sign too that there's something else that you're deficient in. And that's another thing of like I coach people with. So if that's something that you want that one-on-one nutrition of coaching of how do I kind of balance all that and figure out what's going on, I would love to talk more with you on that too. So then there's hitting the wall and then there's bonking. And that's, I don't think I've ever bonked before that I'm aware of, but that's also when I've seen on runs where you see people like doing really, really well, like on marathons, I guess, or half marathons. And then at the end, you see them like dropping, kind of like dropping like flies almost. That's bonking. And there's lots of reasons too, that they might be injured or there's other reasons. But if they're kind of passing out or just their mental state is not there, that's when glycogen depletion is completely gone. So after 2 hours, you're just out of glycogen. And again, this varies person to person, activity level, intensity level, all those things make a difference. But really what's happening is our brain also depends on glucose for energy. So when it doesn't have that, it's like, no, I'm not going to keep going here. You just are impaired focus and mental ability is gone. And so that's where it's really hard to complete really any activity at that point. So that's what happens. But in order to prevent that, we're going to just talk a little bit about how do you properly fuel so you don't have that happen to you. And it actually starts before your run. So 3 to 5 hours before you go running, really, this is basically just a whole bunch of numbers, but really you want a normal meal. And that includes a good amount of carbohydrates. Again, carbohydrates are not your enemy. It's not a time to be restricting anything because really, again, our glycogen, we want to keep that up high. So overnight, you have a fast, you sleep. And so you're not eating anything. And that's when your glycogen stores can become depleted. So really, just if it's basically 0.5 to 1 gram of carbohydrates per pound of body weight. Again, you don't have to think about that necessarily. I don't really analyze all the carbohydrates that I'm eating. I just know I need to have a good amount of carbohydrates when I have my meal. So for example, 1 cup of milk with Cheerios or oatmeal, some orange juice and a banana, you're good to go. So it's nothing crazy. You just want to make sure that you are getting consistently carbohydrates throughout the day. Say you go for a morning run, you're like, yeah, well, I'm not going to wait 3 to 5 hours. That's okay too. You can eat this. And then if you're comfortable going out for a run, that's totally fine as well. But say you ate maybe for lunch, you're going out for an afternoon run. It's been about 3 hours or 2 hours since you last ate. You probably want to have something, again, just top off that fuel tank. So about 30 to 60 minutes before you go out for a run, have some simple carbohydrates. So that's when you want to have maybe more, something that your body can use pretty quickly. Could be graham crackers, fruit is awesome, dried fruit, applesauce, granola bars, all those things. You can even type in if you have things that you usually go for. Feel free to share those. We can talk about that at the end too. I'd love to hear. I think we can all kind of learn from each other. So if there's something that you know that really works, we can probably all benefit from that. So those are something that you would use then before your run so that you can use it right away. And just a quick little thing here too. Sometimes it's not easy for us to identify when we're underfueled. We just think like, oh, it was a bad run, but it's really probably your body telling you that something was off. And so a key thing to just make note of, if you have like breakthrough hunger, if you're starting to feel hungry early on in the run, even before you go for a run. I've had some clients of mine say like, yeah, I'm hungry before I go out for a run, or even a middle part of your run. It's a sign that you're underfueled, or you just need to get underfueled before you go for that run. And we really want to make sure that you are having something to eat before you go out. If you're feeling sluggish or easily frustrated, or you're frustrated about your run, or if the quality of your workouts continue to decrease throughout the course of the week, that's also can be a sign that you're underfueling. So just keeping those in mind. If you are having something that's happening like that, again, we can talk about that afterwards, or even one-on-one. I'd happy to talk with you about that. So just keeping that in mind, those are some signs to look out for. All right, so then now you had your something to eat, like a good meal, you're having those consistently throughout the day, you're topping off your fuel tank by 30 to 60 minutes before your run, you're having something to eat, and then during. So if you're going for those longer runs, granted, if it's a half-hour run, probably don't need to worry, because your glycogen is able to, that fuel tank is not going to be completely depleted. But if it's longer than 60 minutes, that's when we really want to be focused on getting some nutrition during your run. So there's a threefold goal there. So you want to maintain that adequate blood glucose levels, spare that glycogen, so you don't want to let that get depleted, and then you also want to avoid gastric discomfort. So all three things, that's not easy to do all three of those while you're running. So to help with that, if you have like an hour to 2.5 hour run, we really want to get like 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates in per hour. Longer than that hour, longer than 2.5 hours, really you could go up to 90 grams. And I'm going to show you examples of what that would even look like. Again, each person's different. So you may need more, you may need less, but that's kind of like a general guideline to start with. And again, that's what training runs are for, right? To see what works best for you, what do you need, how do you feel? And then to prevent that gastric discomfort, obviously you're not going to have 90 grams of carbohydrates all at once. That's a full meal, like I showed you a few slides back. That is a complete meal right there of carbohydrates. You would want to space that out. So every 10 to 30 minutes is when you would have a little bit more. And then having water afterwards, just to help with that digestion. All right, and again, like I just mentioned, like do what works best for you. So everybody's going to be different. Practice that. You obviously don't want to be doing all these things new on race day. And then again, listen to your body. That's like the best thing that you can do, because each person's different. So kind of maybe even have a journal if this is new to you. After each run, kind of say, what did you do? How did you feel during or after? And that way you can kind of modify it and adjust to see what works best for you. And again, just keep in mind, eat something before you feel like you need it. A lot of times in running, we just go out, we don't really think about the nutrition side of things, and then we think about it when we're actually like, oh, I'm starting to slow down, I'm starting to get tired. That's probably a sign it was too late. Well, it's not too late. You could still have something, obviously, but you won't get the maximum benefit. You want to get it before you start to slow down and get fatigued. All right. And so this is just some examples. Again, everybody's different. What works for you and what works for somebody else may be different. And again, you can share what works for you or what ideas you have. And as you can see for the gram wise, a lot of these are already like 30 grams. So it makes it simple and pretty easy to know like, okay, I need to have 2 gels in the hour or whatever kind of, works best for you. Again, a sports drink, that's good. It helps with hydration as well. On the other side, it's also a little bit heavier. So keeping that, if you have like a checkpoint that you can, when you're training and you can stop by and pick some of that up, that would probably be pretty helpful. And then you don't have to do like gels or chews or the honey stinger. There's so many different brands out there now. You can also do whole foods. So raisins are 30 grams, a banana is 30 grams. You could even do honey sticks. So all of those would work. I was in a running group once, and there was a older gentleman that would wear a fanny pack, which is in now. So that's good. And he would pull out banana and, or maybe apple and bagel. And he just carried, I don't know, it was like a Mary Poppins bag of, while he was running, he just pulled out everything. So you could do that too. Like anything, whatever works best for you is really what you need to do. And then afterwards. So we always think about like before and during, but afterwards is just as important, if not more so. So we want to then restore those glycogen. It's all about getting that fuel tank back up. And just think it takes time. So you're not going to be able to like go from nothing in your fuel tank all the way up to, it's not like getting gas at your car. It takes a while. So we want to make sure that we do it in small doses and multiple times. And if you can get that something like protein and carbohydrates, start eating that as soon as possible, that's going to give you the most effective recovery, and you're going to be able to be using it more efficiently. Your body it just really wants it at that time, and so it can use it a lot easier. So even within 15 to 30 minutes, if you can get something to start with, I like chocolate milk just because even if I'm not really hungry, I can at least drink that, and I know that I'm getting some carbs, I'm getting some protein to help along with that recovery. And I think this is my last slide, but most importantly, just listen to what your body's telling you, I think is the main key thing here. Like I mentioned, everybody's different. And then really honor that hunger. So eat those balanced meals throughout, is really staying consistent. So you're kind of always thinking of as a fuel tank. You always want to make sure that you're getting it kind of up there and ready to go. And again, as soon as you start fueling properly, you're going to notice that change pretty much immediately. So that's kind of nice that it's not like this lagging of, 2 weeks later, I might see something. No, you're definitely going to see a difference. I've had clients change up like yesterday or the day before when I talk with them. And then the next day they tell me like, wow, I didn't feel tired while I was running. And I'm like, that's a really good sign. That's really good. And then also just keep in mind that sickness and injury, that's your body's way of telling you that something's just not right. So Spencer's going to lead into that, I think, really well on how to prevent injury as well. But then keep in mind that nutrition, it can also be that side of things too. If you are getting sick pretty frequently, that can definitely play a big role as well. So again, just as a little snapshot of, again, any questions that you have. I do that nutrition coaching, so there is a discount code here. If you're interested in that, I'd love to talk more. And then, of course, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and all those things. But anyway, I think that's it. I think we're going to take questions now. I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen just so I can see a little bit better of what's going on. And yeah, would love to take any questions.
So if anyone does have any questions and you missed that message earlier, if you want to type that in the group chat, and I'll try to field them and ask them for you to Kara. I had one. It's the only one that's been typed in the group chat so far. So maybe while people are thinking of their questions, we'll start there. So I'm training for a 50K in the fall, and I did this last year, and I bonked or hit the wall really hard at elevation. Is there a way or something that we can do during training where we can adapt the body to postpone that hitting the wall? Is there stuff leading up to race day that we can train our body to push that off a couple hours or so?
Sure. Yeah. I think it kind of goes like, again, your body can only have like so much glycogen. So there is like the carb loading is something where you just want to make sure you do want to just have carbohydrates, I think, consistently on a regular basis. So the carb loading helps, but again, you can only store so much glycogen. And so it's basically you want to get enough good complex carbohydrates that your body can then store and use. So leading up to it, that's something like just making sure that you are getting enough carbohydrates. I mean, daily, really, the consistency is the key thing there. But then even, I think for postponing it, it also has to do with like training, because how efficient your body can use that glycogen. So as the more you are training those longer runs, I think our bodies adjust and can maybe even not, it doesn't take as much work, I guess, to go on those longer runs. And so your body doesn't need as much energy. Same with like if somebody's starting out with a 5K, it might be a lot of work for them and they might use a lot of energy, burn a lot of calories. But for somebody that's used to running a marathon, 5K might be kind of like a warm up for them. And they don't get as, it doesn't take as much energy. So they might not burn as much fuel. They don't need as much glycogen at that beginning stage. So that might be something that just training adequately beforehand, so then you can go a little bit longer before you need that nutrition. And then just postponing it is just making sure that you have that nutrition readily, like kind of just keep eating it, having something consistently like every 30 minutes in smaller doses might help to just prevent that from actually occurring. Hopefully the key is not to postpone it like indefinitely so that you don't actually have that happen at all.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a long kind of answer.
No, helpful. That was helpful. Thank you. Another question.
And I do think, can I jump on? Talk about that too?
Go ahead.
I do think it's a combination, right, of the nutrition and the training. There's kind of tricks you can do in training to help prepare you for that, using super compensation where you're doing like back-to-back longer runs, or you decrease the time that you have of recovery between runs, just to teach your body to deal with that fatigue state. And it's not necessarily that you're running fast during that time, but it's just like the total volume that you're getting in that time to help teach your body how to utilize all those energy sources. Like Kara mentioned, it takes time to rev that engine up, right? So, especially with fat utilization. It takes time to do that and energy to do that. So get your body to be more optimal and efficient, like she said, with that I think is really key. And balancing the nutrition during your run, before, after, but also the training, I think is really important. So, yeah.
Okay. Thanks. A question rolled in from a Chromebook 85FC. Hi, during a marathon, what are your thoughts on balancing water intake versus something like Gatorade? So how does one know when to take the water cup from the aid station or the Gatorade cup? You know, there's always a two cups.
That's a great question. And Spencer, feel free to chime in too. It's hard. Sometimes I'll like, which one do I like? It's such like a split second like decision of like, which one do I go for? I don't know. And this is me personally, I'll kind of like alternate. So I know like based on my training runs too, I don't want to have too much Gatorade because that'll just kind of like gut rot almost. It just sits there and I really don't feel very good. And so I try to balance that out of between Gatorade and water. And I really listen to, like I said, listen to my body of, okay, am I feeling fatigued? Is this something that my body's needing? Where is my nutrition at? Have I been having some gels or some shot blocks? And so I guess the balance there is practicing too before the marathon of just seeing what works for you personally. And I guess take in mind, you're not going to be having, I think I said like 15 grams is in a cup of 15 grams of carbohydrates is in a cup of Gatorade. You probably aren't going to be drinking all like a full cup at one time. You're probably getting more like 1 to 2 ounces. So it's not that much that you're getting at one time. And so just having it spaced out can actually work pretty well. Spencer, did you have any other thoughts on that you want to chime in on?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, right? It's training. Like if you practice it in training to help prepare you for races, you don't do anything different on race day that you haven't practiced before. I would say if you carry a bottle and you've got like sports drink like that, you can take it in slowly over time. And like Kara mentioned, you can get more of that volume, and that's great. When you pick up the couple ounces at the table, it's not going to really fulfill that need. So you need something else too to supplement that. I have felt from personal experience and from other athletes that even getting that quick little hit of Gatorade in the mouth and getting that kind of sugar can help give you that little pick-me-up, but it's not a pick-me-up that's going to last for till the next aid station. You still need those calories and those carbohydrates in there.
I always, if I have too much Gatorade, I'll get a very gunky mouth, and it just sucks. So that's when I know, for me in personal experience, when I've done longer races, is I need to cut the sugar and go back to water just to dilute the feeling in my mouth. It's more of an immediate sensation for me.
Yeah, and for me too, like sometimes I'll take it and I'll like swish it around in my mouth and spit it out, and you get like a little bit of that quick rush. But then it's not, like you said, sitting in your mouth, and you get kind of that cottonmouth gunky feeling going. So
cool. So that was the last question in our group chat as of now. If anything does pop up in the audience's minds while Spencer's talking about Kara stuff, feel free to throw it in that group chat as well. But I want to make sure we get into Spencer's portion of the talk here. So yeah, Spencer, why don't you take it away?
Awesome. So I'm Spencer Agnew. I'm a physical therapist and running coach. I work mainly with endurance athletes, but I see people kind of across the board, your typical PT, vestibular, low back pain, all that stuff. But my kind of niche specialty is in the endurance world. So I'm hanging out in my garage right now. I'm a little chilly, so if I'm like moving around, I'm sorry about that. But I'm here, so it's easier for me. I'm going to demonstrate some movements, some muscle activation, some drills type things. I have space here, and my son's not going to grab the phone. So to start, I'll kind of organize what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about before race day. I'm going to talk about the day before a race, and then kind of the warm-up activity leading into a race. So this is going to hit kind of across the board. Some of you here, I saw are coaches, so you may know a lot of this stuff. And I'm here to kind of reiterate to say, hey, like tell your athletes, force your athletes to do this in season and out of season. Like Kara had mentioned previously with the nutrition stuff, this is what you practice. It's what you do habitually that's going to make an impact long-term. So if we can habitually do the things before race day, it's going to make race day go even smoother. We don't want to do anything on race day that we haven't done in practice. So leading into race day, the big thing that matters is preparing yourself for the competition and the desires and the needs that the competition is going to withhold. So there's different goals that people have, different performance goals or just completion goals, if it's a ultra marathon or your first 5K or whatever. So those demands are dictated by your goals. And that's something where having a coach or having somebody to communicate with is really good, because they can help guide you through that process instead of just thinking, all right, I'm just going to get out and run 5K, I'm going to run 3 miles every day, and I know I'm ready to go. We know there's more to that. And a lot of people think that there's only this kind of cardiovascular aspect where we're training the heart, the lungs, training the muscles to be able to withstand the demands of running, which is really, really important. And as a physical therapist, that's one of my big goals and aspirations, is to get people to focus a little bit more on that tissue capacity and that strength training. But today I want to focus more on the nervous system and the neuromuscular coordination aspect of running, because this is something that a lot of people neglect, but is really, really important, because we know running is a skill, right? A lot of people think about running as just something that we go out and do, and they don't think of it as basketball or baseball or any of those ball sports, but there is a skill with running, and we can refine and improve that running skill. Our bodies have what's called the central pattern generator in our nervous system. So we come out and we know how to walk and we know how to run. But we all know that we've seen somebody who's just starting to run, and we've seen somebody who's been running for years and years, who's more of an expert, and they look totally different, right? And we all look different when we run, but we know the difference between somebody who's just starting and somebody who is more fluid and efficient with their movement pattern. And that's something that we can focus on and improve to help prime the system and get you ready to demonstrate your best ability come race day. So focusing on training from a cardiovascular aspect, great. That's the coach. That's something that you're going to rely on with them. They can also help you with this neuromuscular coordination aspect. So a way that I try to teach this, and this is awesome that Kara used an analogy with a car too, because I'm going to use a highway. But there's neuromuscular coordination is the connection between the brain, the nervous system, and the muscles. And our muscles move because of the contraction, the action potentials and such that occur through the nervous system. So what I like to think about is I think about it as a highway. So there's a connection from your brain, spinal cord to your muscles. And when you start running, that highway maybe is a little bumpy, it's got some potholes, the speed limit might be 25 miles an hour. And as you do more runs, as you do more drills, as you focus in training on this neuromuscular aspect, you can smooth out that road, fill in those potholes, increase that speed limit. So maybe you're going 80 miles an hour on the interstate and it's smooth sailing. You can get those signals to go from the brain to the muscles more efficiently and more quickly, which is only going to help improve your skill of running. So with a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today, it's focused on that improvement of the highway or maintaining your highway and trying to get as many signals to go through that path as possible so that we can be more in tune with our highest potential for running and more in tune with that skill optimization for running. As physical therapists, our big goal is to optimize movement. And what's optimization movement? We could debate that all day because we think there's normal, but what's normal is normal for you. But we can still utilize these scientific principles of the neuromuscular coordination, increasing the skill for each individual. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to look the same as somebody else, but you're going to be more optimal for yourself. So we're trying to build a better highway. So the day before a race, I recommend what would we do? So we want to make sure that we're running. Most people do this, but some people, depending on where they're at in their training or in their introduction to the sport, if they're just doing like a local 5K, they may say, hey, I don't want to waste anything for that race, so I'm going to take the day off. But what that does is it limits the activation in that highway. So we want to be able to run to maintain all the work that we've done, all of the neuromuscular firing, the action potentials, those neurotransmitters that have been flowing through that neural pathway, and keep it as in tune with our body as possible. So it doesn't mean that you have to run very far or very long. The run the day before is going to totally depend on where you are in training. If this is a peak race, maybe it's just like you're doing a warm-up. Doing a warm-up, doing some drills and strides. If it's not, then maybe it's more of a typical easy run. But after that run, we've got to make sure you do drills and strides. And these are things that a lot of people neglect through training. Doing these drills are only going to help increase that coordination, increase that skill. Doing the strides gets you can do them a couple different ways. A lot of times I do them as a crescendo and decrescendo. So you slowly ramp up speed. Halfway through that stride, you're at 90% of your speed, max speed, and then you come back down. It helps get your body used to that changes in pace, gets your body used to that increased speed or velocity that you're going to need come race day, right? Most of the time our races are a little bit faster than our typical easy days. Again, a lot of this depends on the distance, and in running, we're lucky that there's a variety of activities that we can do. If you're coaching high school kids and they're doing an 800, 400, all the way up to people doing 100-mile races. So obviously the paces are going to change and the demands are going to change depending on that. And most of this is going to be geared towards the shorter distances, probably like track stuff up to the half marathon. But in general, as your duration of activity increases, your warm-up time decreases, right? So you need a little bit more warm-up for the shorter races than you do for the longer ones because the speed demands are so much higher. So you have to prepare your body and prime the system to be able to meet those demands. So day before a race, do some sort of short run. We're doing some sort of drills and strides. I like to do them on a track or on the roads just to kind of get that feel, get some good turnover. If you have cross-country athletes or if you're a trail runner, doing stuff on the trails is great too because specificity is really, really important. We want to train on the terrain and in a manner that's going to prepare us specifically for the demands of our race. And then doing those drills and doing those strides. We'll go over some of those drills in a little bit to get you moving and help warm me up a little bit being out in the cold. But that's what I would do day before. We're trying to maintain that highway, keep those pathways firing on all cylinders. For the warm-up, even before warming up, I like to have people do muscle activation. So this is where people get kind of confused on, is this a muscle activation drill or is this kind of a dynamic drill before a race or before a workout? For muscle activation stuff, these are, for me, slower movements. There's some sort of dynamic stretching movements, some sort of easy muscle activation movements. There are a ton of things you can do for this. And most of it can be individualized. So this is something that I work with a lot of my physical therapy clients is they come in with an injury or something's been bothering them in their training runs, and we work through that and we figure out what do they need to help decrease the demands from that specific injury so that they can feel better when they run and that's not bothering them as much leading forward. So some people need more hip and glute activation. Some people have to warm up their gastroc or their calf muscle complex. It's totally variable depending on the individual. I've got 5 things today. Yeah, 5 things today that I'm going to show you and walk you through, things that I do before my runs. But again, it can be individualized to the person. The things I'm going to show you today, you don't need any bands, you don't need any ropes for. So if you don't have those things, it's easy to complete on your own. Some people do like doing band work. So they'll do some hip activation stuff. They'll put bands around their knees and do some toe tapping exercises. They'll use the ropes to get some activation going. But I wanted to show you guys stuff without those just in case you don't have access to that stuff. So I'm going to show you kind of a general muscle activation routine that I go through. And this muscle activation routine is something that's done before every run that I do. So a lot of people hop out the door, get into their run. I've got athletes that say like, yeah, I feel it takes me like 3 or 4 miles to warm up and kind of get into feeling good. This is something that can help to prime that system, get those muscles firing and prepare them for the activity and the demands that you're going to put on them with the run that you're going to do. So I'm going to move my camera down so you guys can see. Take a step back. So 5 things I'm going to do. We're going to do some knee hugs, some walking Frankensteins, walking sweeps, lunges, and single leg RDLs. Some of this, especially you coaches, are going to know these already. My kind of challenge would be to try to program this into your athletes' routines frequently so that they can practice this, especially before workouts, but even in kind of the off time. So I know for the high school kids that I coach and I work with in the summer and winter months, they never do this stuff. So if we can keep them in touch with this, it helps prepare them and helps kind of prime the system for when we get to the specific part of training, come the track season, come the cross country season, it gives them a little bit of a leg up. But if you're able to get your kids or your athletes to do this, that'd be great. So walking knee hugs. You guys can see me. So we start just the knee hug, and then I take 1, 2, 3 steps, and then up to the other one. Good. So it's hug, 1, 2, on the 3rd step, up. 1, 2, 3rd step, up. And I would do about 10 feet. Nothing crazy, maybe doing 6 of them. So it's nice, short, get a little bit of movement going with that. The Frankensteins are nice and easy. You're bringing your hand up to your foot. So depending on your flexibility, you might be able to get your leg all the way up. Some people are going to have to go down here. Totally fine. Remember, this is a muscle activation, kind of just a warm-up drill. We don't want to push to the point of injury. So we don't want you to kick up as far as you can. Awesome, nice. So we don't want you kicking up as far as you can. This is nice and easy. So especially with high school kids, I get kids all the time that are trying to kick as far as they can because they think it's a challenge, I think it's a goal to go as far and high as you can. But make sure you reiterate to your athletes that you're just trying to feel good. We're just going to go to where your body's going to allow you to warm things up. The more you do this, the more you practice, the further up you're going to be able to go, the more movement and range of motion you're going to tolerate. So same thing as with the knee hugs, I do 3 steps. So I'll do 1, and then I'll go 1, 2, 3, and up. And then 1, 2, 3. No. So there's like a little bit of a rhythm to it, especially with running being a rhythmic sport, right? We try to get into this rhythm, this cadence, tempo. So we want to do that within all the activities that we're doing, whether it's lifting, drills, strides, just a regular run. Walking sweeps is another thing for that posterior chain, kind of the glutes all the way down to the calf. This is one that I see people do wrong all the time. So if I have people do a sweep, it's this, and then 1, 2, 3, and sweep. A lot of people will go here, and they'll just reach down towards their toes. So if you can see a difference, watch my back. If I just reach down towards my toes, I bend at my back instead of doing a hip hinge and sitting with my bottom back. So to practice this one, I have people pretend that they're holding some groceries and they've got to close the car door with their backside, right? Or if you're standing against a wall and you just reach towards your backside, your back stays nice and straight and your hips are sinking back. So this is used from a nervous system standpoint and also a muscle tissue standpoint. Our nerves have to glide and move just like our muscles do. A lot of times we think range of motion and stretching is just for the muscle tissue, but there's a big neuro component to it as well. And doing that walking sweep helps kind of stretch a little bit through that backside, through the hips, hamstring, calf, but it also hits that nerve that runs down the backside. So this is one that, again, you need to be really gradual with. Some people, if they're limited in that range of motion, or if they've got something called neurotension in the back, where they have a little bit of tightness that's more nerve related, when they do this, they only go down this far. And that's totally fine. You're still warming it up. For you, that's exactly what you need. I've got a little bit more flexibility, so I can go down a little bit deeper. But I still feel that pull all the way through. And again, for all these 10 feet or so. So you do 10 feet down, 10 feet back, and just kind of go back and forth. Walking lunges, I do forward and backwards. So keeping your chest nice and upright, high knee, down, up. And then this one, I just go one after the other. So I'll just do like 6 steps. Again, I keep it about 10 feet, nice and easy. Down, and then up and back. So we want to stay nice and tall, try to replicate our running form as much as possible with the lunges. And the last one I do is a single leg RDL. This one is really, really tough for new runners, new people into kind of a lifting routine. We want to make sure that you keep your back and your leg nice and straight. So for new people I'm working with, I think about, or have them think about kind of those birds on top of people's desks that are like tipping back and forth. And the bird stays nice and straight instead of bending at the back. So I'll show you the right way, and then I'll show you the wrong way. So I go to a high knee position. All the stuff I do is try to replicate the running motion. So I'll go to this position, and then I'll reach down and up. So I stay nice and flat and back up. Some people don't have the balance or the range of motion to be able to do that. So if you don't, and you just go to here, or if you're just going to here, totally fine. But your trunk and your leg stays in a nice straight line. What a lot of kids do is they think they have to get to the floor. So they'll do this, and then they'll go here. So if you can see, watch my back. I bend at my back. So instead of keeping it nice and straight, there's a bend in it. So you want to try to keep it nice and straight. And again, with all these things, do as much as you can tolerate. So don't go all the way if you can't maintain good form. Same thing with the other ones. I'll do 1, 2, 3. I'll do another one. So those are 5 easy kind of muscle activation drills that I do before every one of my runs. So I'll head out. My house is nice. I live at the end of a cul-de-sac, so I can just do 10 feet down, 10 feet back, 10 feet down, 10 feet back, and I'm ready to go. 5 minutes it takes for your run. It'll make your run feel so much better to put in that extra 5 minutes of work. So it's some extra time. I know in a busy schedule it's tough, but you get a lot of bang for your buck for those. So I'm gonna sit, put you guys back up here. Right. Good. So that's before your race day warm up and before any other run that you're gonna do. It's just these muscle activations. Then you lead into your warm up. So like we said previously, the warm up is going to depend on the race. So if you've got a long 50-mile, 100-mile race, like you might be doing a walk and some of those muscle activation drills, some just regular running drills to get you primed and ready to go. If you're doing a 5K, you're gonna go out and do a little bit of a run. This can be dependent on, like we said, the distance, but also your experience in the sport. So some people don't have as much mileage under their belt, so doing a 15-minute run is a long duration for them. Some people doing a 10 to 15-minute warm-up is no issue at all. A lot of times when I'm doing more of my shorter distance stuff, I'll do a 20-minute warm-up. Just because it takes me that long, do the muscle activation, do the run to kind of get my body primed and ready for the demands that we're about to impose on it. So 10 to 15 minutes, nice, easy jog. Come back, use the bathroom, get your things for the race day. And then something different that I like to use that a lot of people are afraid of is a 2 to 3 minute tempo pickup before the run. So this isn't as fast as you can go. It's a comfy, hard warm up. It's to help, as Kara mentioned previously, some of these energy systems for fueling take time to ramp up. So it helps to tap into some of those energy systems, tell your body that, hey, I'm about to put some increased demands on you. You better be ready for it. So it gives your body time to ramp that up, but it also gets that neural pathway, that highway activated, and starts getting your body ready for that increase in demands. I'm saying the same words over and over. Increase in demands that you're going to put on it with the speed related. So primes the energy systems, but also primes the neural pathways and the muscles for the activity that's about to be imposed. 2 to 3 minutes. It's not very long, and make sure that it's more of a comfy, hard effort. This is something that you definitely want to practice before race day. Some of my athletes will have them do a progressive warm-up. So we say we do a 20-minute warm-up, you do 10 to 15 minutes easy, and then those last 5 or 10 minutes, you gradually increase into more of a tempo, down-tempo type effort, just to get them used to this before you just throw it on in race day. I know some people will freak out that they think they're wasting some of their race effort by doing this, but we do it far enough in advance where you have time to recover, so that you're not going directly from this tempo, breathing super, super heavy to the track or to the starting line and then racing. So there's a lot of, again, bang for your buck you can get from doing some of that tempo effort. After that, we want to make sure you're doing your drills and strides. So same thing that you would do before the race, the day before, going through those drills, strides from a neuromuscular pathway, maintaining that highway, getting your body used to that increased cadence, increased speed. So these are different than the muscle activation because they're a little bit more intense. There's a little bit more power generation because that's what we need for increased performance. There are a ton of these. So I've got a list of like 8 or 9 of them. You can do, there's so many of these that you can do depending on who you talk to. They've got their favorites. I'm going to walk through some of these with you. Start at kind of less intense, less plyometric wise to more of the intense things. So we've got your high knees, butt kicks, A skips, B skips, C skips, double A's, which are hard from a coordination standpoint, so are C's, karaoke, I call it power skipping, and then Mario jumps, right? And then your strides will be after that. So I'll demo some of these. I'm guessing a lot of you have done them, but I'll kind of demo them and talk through them just a little bit, okay? Put you guys back down. So high knees, pretty easy. This is one that most people know. Again, we're staying nice and tall. If you look at kind of the experts in movement in the running world, which we would probably say is most of them would be your world record holders, right? Your professional athletes. You look across the board and the research shows that the one thing that across the board they have is this upright posture. So staying nice and tall, being able to generate a lot of that hip flexion, hip extension moment is really, really important. So we want to practice that when we're doing our drills, when we're running day to day. So high knees is just, oh no, pretty easy. The high knees and the butt kicks are actually going to look pretty similar. If you ask somebody to do a butt kick, if I say the word butt kick, what people think is this, right? So they bring their foot all the way around to their butt. But running is about generating force, storing and releasing energy as quickly as possible. So we're trying to generate a lot of power. So instead of bringing your foot around here, we want to bring your foot here. Because this lets me cycle through that running motion a lot more quickly than this. So when you're doing a butt kick, it's similar to a high knee, but all we're doing is thinking about bringing that heel as close to your bottom as possible, right? So we can cycle through this motion instead of this motion. So we want to get things to the ground, generate force and extension, and bring them forward. With all of these as well, try to make or watch your athletes or yourself and make sure you land as close to your hips as possible. So if we land under our center of mass, it's called, we can decrease some of those vectors, some of those forces that can result in increased risk for injury. So rather than, I don't know, if we talk about injury risk for running, modifying cadence, we're trying to get you as close to that center of mass as possible. A skips, B skips, C skips. So I'll go through the A skips first. Oh, again, there's a skipping motion in all of this, but it's up. Pretty easy one. A lot of people know that one. B's is going to reach out and around as you come up. So I'll have other videos tagged in. I'm going to post my outline. It'll have videos tagged in, so you can see these in a little bit different environment too, and hopefully that'll help you slow them down. And then C skips. So C skips are a challenge coordination-wise. I'll do it from the front, but it's up this way. And again, we're just trying to increase that coordination, increase that skill. So to start with this one, we have people just do one side, and the other side, and then eventually you can put it all together. So there's your C's. Double A's is just an A, but doing 2 on one side and 2 on the other. Pretty easy, challenging from a coordination perspective. So we're starting to get a little bit more advanced as we go. Karaoke, people know, right? Just going this way and then back. Power skipping and Mario jumps. So power skipping for me, it's a skipping motion, but a little bit more dynamic and forceful. So if I'm back here and I'm just skipping along, right? There's float, there's a lock and ease to it. If I'm doing power skipping, I'm a little bit more focused. I'm generating force into the ground, trying to prepare my body to be able to do that come the raise that's about to occur. And then Mario jumps is again a skip. Make sure I hit my head, but it's up. Trying to impose force into the ground, create some lift. So those are, sorry, get stacked up again. Those are my pre-run, some of the pre-run drills or race drills that you can do. If some people have their favorites they want to stick with, totally fine. I'm just giving you some examples, things that you can do. So takeaways. The big thing to remember is that running is a skill. So we've got to continue to refine that skill and continue to advance that highway, that neural pathway that we're talking about. So doing drills, muscle activation, this coordination stuff is really, really important, not just on race day, but in practice as well. You don't want to do anything on race day that you haven't done in practice. Same thing with nutrition. You don't want to take nutrition. You don't want to try to do these new fueling strategies if you haven't practiced it. So make sure that you're working on that neural pathway, increasing that highway, speed, the efficiency of movement, and trying to increase your skill for running. And then training is to prepare you for the needs and demands of competition. So this warm-up is the same thing that you want to do for that, right? The warm-up is necessary to help prepare you for the demands of competition. And it's going to be variable depending on what competition you're in. So if it's a shorter race, you may have a longer warm-up because you've got to get yourself prepared for this higher intensity activity. If it's a longer race, you're going to have probably a shorter warm-up because you've got a longer duration of activity, a longer duration of time to be able to let your body naturally warm up, and your speed is decreased significantly compared to those shorter races. So I will post my outline, kind of those little jots of information. I'll have all the drills, videos of myself doing them so that you can watch them again if you want to add those in. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We can chat a little bit about what you guys need from a warm-up perspective, training perspective. I know there was a lot of questions that popped up. I don't know if Jerry, if you want to read those off.
Yep.
I saw a couple of them, so I wanted to comment. But
okay. So let's see here. The first one that rolled in during your time was about knee hugs, and that was when I ran to the bathroom quick. Did you didn't get to any questions, correct?
I didn't know.
All right. No, I just want to make sure that you didn't already answer it. That would be embarrassing for me. So the question was from a coach. Coach Katie has her kids do the knee hugs as well, but she has them get up on the toes of the foot that's planted on the ground still. Is
Yep.
there, does that matter? Is there a benefit to having that planted foot, kind of powerfully raised, or is that insignificant? What are your thoughts on that little tidbit of that drill?
Right, and you're just doing it as, I'll stand up here, as like I can't even see, raise up on your toes, right? You're hugging, raising up on the toes.
Yeah,
That's a progression. That's a progression from what I demonstrated, and I like that progression a lot. So the gastroc and soleus complex is really, really important with running. From a research perspective, an isometric contraction at the soleus can generate about 70% of the force when you're trying to increase speed. And oftentimes we focus on the hip and not the calf. So using that kind of just isometric hold where you're raising up on your toes, getting that hug in, is going to help warm up that calf and activate that calf, which is really, really important. So I like that as kind of a progression, of stepping stone from what I demonstrated. There's more of a balance, challenge and difficulty with that. But if athletes practice it and they get prepared, then it's a great way to go. So yeah, I do like that a lot.
Yeah, I would agree with what Spencer's saying. I did a race this morning, a remote race, and that was one of the drills that I had to do. And otherwise, I feel very flat-footed when I run, and I feel like I'm not popping off the ground and using my gastroc and soleus, so the good old calf muscles. So
yep,
yeah,
it's important.
I would say keep doing that with the kids if they can do that. Let's see here. Going down the next question. It was one that I had. Spencer, do you believe that foam rolling has a place in your pre-race routine?
I definitely think people can utilize it. There's a lot of people that love the foam roller, so they're on it all the time. Some people hate it. So there's foam rolling isn't necessarily going to change a lot of the tissue. It's more working on the nervous system. So it's trying to desensitize, especially if people have pain, desensitize the nervous system to help increase your tolerance to activity. But if you like it as more of a warm-up drill, and it makes, especially if people are feeling sore, right? It can help decrease some of that soreness, which from a psychological standpoint is really, really important come race day. So I like it for people in that standpoint. I don't utilize it very often for a warm-up. If I'm like feeling pretty fresh and feeling pretty good, I use the muscle activations instead. But I do think there's a time and a place for the foam roller.
Cool. Next question from Katie. And I can relate. You're crammed in a corral for 35-40 minutes before the start of a race, specifically a full Ironman. How do you keep, how do you do an effective warm-up? How can you keep the body warm? So maybe you did your warm-up ahead of time, and then the announcer says, "Oh, come to your corral, come to your gate," and now you're squished in like sardines.
Right.
What can you do? What would you recommend?
I would recommend a lot of those drills. So you're not necessarily going to be moving with them. You're standing still because you're jam-packed in there. But doing some of those drills, trying to keep things as dynamic as possible, is going to be really important to help prepare the body for that, right? You've done your warm-up, and then you sit, and you feel like everything that you've just done is for naught. Your heart rate's decreasing. You don't feel as warm as you did previously. So doing some sort of jumping activity, some of those drills, I'm sure you guys could hear my heart rate was elevated. I was a little short of breath when I was trying to talk after doing those, is a great way to try to, you've already done some of the work, but a great way to kind of get your body back to that level. That power skipping one, or just some like single leg or double leg hopping would be a great thing to do to increase that heart rate again, but also to increase that tissue load through kind of the gastroc and that posterior chain to help generate that force you're going to utilize going forward. It's hard with an Ironman because the first thing you do is go in the water. So I think a lot of it is just getting that heart rate up and make sure your body feels loose and ready to go. So jumping, drills, any of those sort of things to make sure you keep moving to utilize those muscles is really important.
Cool. Next question from Amanda. Do you have your athletes that you work with warm up the rest of their nervous systems, i.e. visual pathways or sensory pathways? Other types?
Before like races and stuff, I guess I don't necessarily. I'm trying to think about doing that. I don't necessarily do that before visual pathways. Do you have an example, like something that you do?
I don't know if this would be the same thing, but it's something that's come to my mind whenever you were talking is I oftentimes before the race, I'll try to control my breathing. And so, there are muscles involved with breathing and I try to get it under control because I know if I start my race without that, my breathing can really quickly escalate and get out of control. And then, that causes me to notice it and I start to panic and I have anxiety over it. And it draws a lot of my attention, which should be focused on running. And so I don't know if this is what Amanda, please clarify if you need to in that group chat if we're dancing around your.
Yeah, if we're missing it.
But that's something I will do. I've never done any visual stuff. Maybe I'll close my eyes to really get in the zone. From a kind of a psychological perspective, I might do that. But yeah, I'll try to keep the heart rate going, but everything else calm and collected.
Right. There's a mindfulness aspect to that. And I think that's really, really important. There's things that I do as a coach that we try to work on that, the visualization, being process orientated instead of results orientated. So this is kind of stepping away from the physical therapy side, but being a little bit more mindful about what we're doing and doing things for the right reasons. Okay, you're thinking posture. But some of that stuff is really good. So I work a little bit with Mike Clark, who does a lot of this mindfulness and mental preparedness stuff. And he's got some really, really good tricks up his sleeves. So if you look at like Clark Performance on Instagram, he's got a lot of that stuff for like what Jared's talking about, like the calmness, the mindfulness, being kind of in tune with what's going on. Did she say posture?
Yeah, and I would say with posture, a lot of the drills that Spencer was going over in that uprightness and that form and maintaining it, doing those drills will help me. Otherwise, like I said, I'll feel very flat, and I'll be crouched over, and things are going to be tight where they shouldn't be tight, and pulling my body in a very uncomfortable form and posture. So the drills, I would say, are definitely going to help with posture when running.
Yeah, and I guess that's the really important part. Sorry, the sun's changing. I'm like a ghost. The drills are really important to do repetitively and over time too, because that's going to become innate into your nervous system, right? You're going to feel like that's your new normal. So that's where if you can do those drills correctly and not necessarily push to the extremes. So if you can't go, let's just say all the way with Frankenstein, like go to where you can control, and over time, you're going to get better at that movement. You're going to get a little bit more optimization through that, get more range of motion, and you won't have to necessarily think about it. It'll just be there. So like even when I try to do those sweeps and I try to do it incorrectly, my body just naturally does a hip hinge. So because I've done a lot of deadlifting, because I've done those single leg RDLs, my body knows that hip hinge movement pattern. And that's something that a lot of people don't have. So it's just a skill you've got to learn. So from the posture standpoint, I think the more connect reflex though, I dabble in neuroscience. Oh, that tend to look down. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So right, man, we can get a lot of stuff. Just talking about a little bit more about looking down instead of looking ahead. So that's good.
Good questions.
There's some cueing that you can use. Again, this is going to be in practice a lot too, right? There's nothing we're going to be able to change right before a race to be able to get people out of this routine. But a lot of times I see people so balance is made up of like 3 different components, right? There's your visual system, there's your vestibular system, and proprioception. And when people look down a lot, it's because they're over-reliant on their visual system. So I have people practice doing single leg balance or jumping activities with their eyes closed. Just because we can't, especially if you're in a large crowd and things like that, you can't always be looking down at the ground. If you're on a trail, right? You can't always look at your feet. You have to look and see what's ahead. There might be a root or a rock or a little ledge that you got to jump down. So we have to be able to use our visual system to see what's around us instead of see where our foot's going to be landing next. So yeah, I use a lot of things with eyes closed to take away that visual system so that people are forced to use their proprioception and their vestibular system to get a little bit more better body awareness. Is that more of what you're looking for? Yeah, ish. Okay, yeah. Yes, there's nothing I do necessarily before a race for that. That's something that I practice the months leading up to it.
Cool. For the sake of time, I think we should wrap up. Sorry that we did roll over a little bit, but thanks for the folks for sticking with us. If you do have further questions, Kara had her contact on the her last slide. Spencer, I'm sure if you Googled peak endurance performance, Madison, Wisconsin, Spencer Agnew, you're gonna find it. Same with Kara. The Google machine, it's wonderful. Use it. But anyways, I'll try to post a video of this recording. I want to thank you all for coming. Kara, do you have any last minute closing thoughts or comments?
No, thanks everyone for coming out. And if you have questions, reach out to us. Happy to, I love talking about nutrition and running together. It's just awesome. So yeah, thanks for coming out, and happy to answer more questions when needed.
Cool. And we'll probably be in the works with scheduling another one of these. I think it went really well. And yeah, even though races are canceled for now, it could be the fall that we have a few that are popping up. So it's always good to make sure we're still prepared.
And training is training. So everything you do now is going to make you a better athlete going forward.
Absolutely.
So, and motivation. So I'm going to soapbox too. With motivation is not going to lead to your success. Discipline does. So motivation is a fallacy. There's professional athletes that are not motivated every day, but they're disciplined. So if you can stay disciplined in this time, you're going to get to your goals. If you are looking necessarily for motivation, that's more of a results focused mindset. Stay process oriented, especially during these tough times. So thanks everybody for stopping in. Next week, some strength training too. So stop in next week too if you want to go through a little bit more strength work.
Absolutely. That'll be next Friday at 8 a.m. Was it?
8 a.m. Yeah.
Okay. And it'll be the same Zoom format. So mark your calendars, check the Facebook for that. It's on the Move and Choose and Peak Endurance Facebook. All right, everybody have a good Saturday. Be well, be safe. If you haven't already ran, get a run in. It's beautiful weather out there.